Hi, this is Victoria Nalule, and here with me again is Dr. Darren McCauley, a senior lecturer in the School of Geography and Sustainable Development at the University of St. Andrews. In the previous videos, we talked about fossil fuels and energy justice. We've also discussed about alternative fuels and energy justice. We also went ahead to talk about the geographical implications of energy justice, and Dr. McCauley also discussed about energy justice from a global perspective, where also brought in issues to do with energy access. In this video, we want to focus on a transition to a low carbon economy. But before we start, I'd like Dr. McCauley to briefly introduce himself again.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me back. So yes, indeed, I am leading the St. Andrews Sustainability Institute. And today what I would like to focus on is my experience dealing with commercial interests, such as doing projects with EDF and Rosneft and various different companies I've been lucky enough to either have been sponsored by or worked with in various guises. And I would also like to think on the flip side about the role of workers and trade unions within this broad transition away from a fossil fuel dependent global energy system. So I look forward to discussing that.
All right, thank you very much for the introduction. In the previous videos we had with Professor Raphael Heffron, we talked about a just transition to a low carbon economy from a legal perspective, and in this video we want to explore more on the geographical implications of a just transition to a low carbon economy. But before we start, maybe Dr. McCauley can just give our viewers a brief understanding or a brief overview of a transition to a low carbon economy, and then afterwards you can bring in the geographical implications.
Happy to. So the transition to a low carbon economy has been recently coined under the phrase of a just transition. And indeed, a just transition is something that emerged in the recent G7 communique in 2018 as a core objective through which international community wishes to try to pursue. And that is to try to create industrial growth, economic growth in a way which places justice at the center. So that's why I referred to my open remarks about businesses and employees going hand in hand, hopefully, towards a more just, equitable future, towards a low carbon economy effectively.
All right, so what are the geographical implications of a just transition to a low carbon economy?
Yes, I think one of the core factors where the just transition idea tries to get us to focus on is the fact that as we transition away from fossil fuels globally, there are going to be areas that are going to be significantly impacted upon, both in terms of business investment and employment opportunities. So a good example would be Poland within a European stance, where Poland has been heavily dependent upon coal. And we have a sort of industry that's been developed in Poland, which is reliant upon coal. And we have to be cognizant of that. And very recently, the European Parliament put aside 5 billion euros as a transition fund to try to help Poland in recognition of the fact that this sort of reduction of the coal industry in Poland will have significant impacts for that nation. And so whenever we think about a just transition geographically, we think about the areas in which there's a heavy dependence on fossil fuels and how we can try to help those areas transition away from fossil fuels.
All right, thank you very much. And then besides Poland, I'll also give the example in Southern Africa. When you look at the SADC, you realize that countries such as Botswana and South Africa, they heavily rely on coal for electricity generation. And then if you're to bring in the justice connection, you notice that if you are moving from fossil fuels to alternative fuels, and yet these countries are dependent on this for electricity generation, that means you'll have more people who have no access to electricity.
Yes.
That's also from a geographical and legal perspective. But anyway, moving forward, what should be the way forward to ensure that there is a just transition in a low carbon economy, but also considering the geographical perspective, what should be the way forward for policymakers to ensure that there is a just transition?
I think the examples you gave are absolutely extremely apt for this discussion, and that is there are going to be countries where this move away from fossil fuels is going to be very painful. And indeed, if we are going to make sure that energy access remains a global objective, we have to be cognizant of that fact. And the European Parliament example that I raised is a very interesting one in the sense that financially speaking, these areas will require a lot of investment. And I think we've got to get real about the fact that as we transition away from fossil fuels, we've got to think of new mechanisms through which areas of the world may benefit from alternative renewables. This distributional inequality of certain areas, such as in Northern Europe, having greater wind potential, for example, than other parts of the world. We've got to think of new financial incentive mechanisms to share and redistribute not just the burdens of the various aspects, but also the benefits. And I think the South Africa and Botswana examples you raised are a great example of that. We need to think of new ways of redistributing the benefits of the alternative energy movement, which is at the heart of a low carbon economy. And that's why we talk about a low carbon economy, because we're extremely aware of the fact that there is going to be major financial implications. And we need new mechanisms, new ways of redistributing the benefits that are going to take place in the future.
Yes, thank you very much. But also, I'll note the fact that as we are focusing on redistributing, we also have to realize the economic disparities between the countries. Because renewable energies at the moment are very expensive ventures, not only in Africa but also in Europe, and there are many. Obviously, they have their advantages, but there are also some disadvantages. But I think the focus, yes, we need to focus on a transition to a low carbon economy, but we also have to focus on investing more in clean technology, whereby these countries that are still poor, that are still struggling economically, can be able to utilize some of these resources, but in a cleaner way.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think I'll just add that. Yes. But anyway, that marks the end of our last video. And thank you very much, Darren, for your time.
No problem.
Thank you very much, our viewers. Stay tuned. Do not forget to subscribe for more videos. We shall come back and discuss different topics, because I'm sure there's lots of things to discuss when it comes to energy justice, transition to a low carbon economy. This is a global topic, but we also have to bring in different policymakers, academia, to really find out how can we shift in a just way. Thank you very much, Darren.
Thank you very much, Victoria.
Bye-bye.
Bye.